Hello, everyone. Just a few more folks are joining. Great to see so many people here. Hello, hello. Okay, this is Alexia. I'm going to give a quick visual description before we start. I am a white woman with wavy blonde hair, wearing clear glasses and a green sweater. Behind me, you can see some books and some art on the wall. Welcome to the first Rev Up call of the year. I'm seeing some new names on here, so I wanted to remind that REV UP stands for Register, Educate, Vote, Use Your Power, and is a national movement to build the power of the disability vote. In this space, we have advocates from around the country, some who have been doing disability advocacy work and voter outreach for decades, and some who are newer to the movement. So I'm very excited to welcome you all into this space. I want to acknowledge that there is a lot happening in the world right now, and so much urgency and work that needs to be done, and so many potential things to discuss. Today, we're really going to keep our focus on state legislative advocacy around voting rights. So hoping we can have some good conversation and strategy around that. Next slide, please. So before we get into our agenda, I'm going to go over our access features. We do have cart captioning today, so you can view that by clicking the CC button on your bottom toolbar or by clicking the stream text link in the agenda. We also have our ASL interpreters, Kelly and Derek. They are spotlit for everyone. If you need to use the ASL interpreter to communicate, please just pause for a minute to make sure they are seeing you. And as a reminder, if you hear or see Kelly or Derek's voice, they are communicating for a deaf advocate. So please keep yourself on mute if you are not speaking, but we will have lots of space for questions and comments from folks today. So we encourage you to use the raise hand feature, and we will let you come off mute. We'll try to keep the chat a little bit to a minimum during the presentations because it can be distracting for screen reader users. And we will also have breakout rooms today during part of the second half of our call. We will have CART and ASL interpreters in those rooms as well. All right, next slide, please. Okay, just want to go ahead and go over our agenda. We are going to start our call by honoring the late Bob Kafka. Then we'll talk a little bit about the 2026 landscape in Rev Up. Then we're going to have a fabulous guest presentation from Evan, who is from Secure Democracy and the Voting Rights Lab. We'll take a 10-minute break, and when we come back, we're going to hear perspectives from two grassroots advocates in Alabama, and then we will have an opportunity to connect in breakout rooms. All right, next slide. So I think many people in this space probably know of Bob Kafka, but if this is the first time that you're learning his name, it is not the first time that you are impacted by his work. I can tell you that. He was a Vietnam veteran. He was a longtime organizer with ADAPT. He was part of the movement to make public transportation accessible and also to increase home and community-based services that allowed disabled people to move out of institutions and into the community. Bob was also the founder of REV UP. He had a great vision for how state and local advocacy could power disabled people and connect us to a nationwide network of change. Bob was a mentor and a friend to many of us, to myself included, and yeah, his legacy is really living on through this work, and I would love to spend a few minutes to invite folks to share a memory of Bob or a reflection. If you'd like to raise your hand or come off mute. I see we have a couple of Rev Up Texas advocates on the call, and I'm wondering if they would like to kick us off. Yeah, go ahead, Ulissa.
Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. My name is Yulissa. I'm in Austin, Texas. For my visual description, I am a white passing Latina with brown wavy hair, and I'm wearing a gray shirt. Um, I didn't know Bob Kafka that well, but whenever we did interact in meetings and um, we're in the advocacy space together, he was always very attentive and very um collaborative. He also had a really great smile and these calls and a big laugh. Um I also want to mention that he he was a founder, one of the founders of the nonprofit that I work for full time, the Coalition of Texans with Disabilities. Um, to add to his legacy, you know, uh, he often would say, don't mourn, organize. And I think it's very fitting. But yeah, although I didn't know him that well personally, um, just crossing paths with him, I'm so lucky to have had that time, even if it was not that much with him. Yeah.
Miss Alexia, thank you so much for sharing, Ulissa. Yeah, Bob definitely had a very large, joyful energy. And I love that you captured that in your memory.
I think Josue is going to speak for us today about Bob.
Yeah, go ahead, Lydia.
Josue? I guess.
Yeah, Josue, are you on?
Um,
Yes,
Josue?
I'm on.
Yeah,
Um, well, what can I say about Bob? I mean, I knew Bob for over 13 years approximately. He was one of the people that I looked up to and learned from in when I joined Adapt many years ago. And the thing that keeps resounding in me since his passing and all the memories that we've actually collected from people to and shared with others is the onward. When he kept saying onward, every meeting that we had, he just kept setting kept that word onward going, and that's how I view his work and his legacy, and how we should continue to move forward with that in mind, that he always kept us going. Even when it was difficult, he would just keep us going and keep us focused on the work and moving forward. And I know that it's a great loss for the ADAPT community, for the REV UP community, and for the disability community in general. But like several people have mentioned to me, he taught us so much that his work and his legacy is going to continue, hopefully through us and through other people that are working in this. Yeah, that's all I have to say.
Miss Alexia, thank you so much, Josue. That was really beautiful. It makes me think of one of the early graphics that Bob worked on for Rev Up, which used like a drop of water and then the ripple effect of, the impact that the disability vote could have on family members, on caregivers, on community members. And I was sort of picturing that when you were talking, Josue, about the mentorship of Bob and his view on organizing spreading throughout the movement and through organizers like you. Yeah, I think I saw Pam's hand up and then Helen.
Hi, from North Carolina. I was a Texan before I moved here, and I didn't get involved with anything while I was in Texas, but here in North Carolina, started doing the advocacy work, wanted to join Rev Up, very passionate about it, but didn't know exactly what to do and how. I mean, it was not that AAPD wasn't supportive, but I was still trying to figure out what to do. And they connected me with Bob and Texas Rev Up, and he was a very good mentor for people who were getting started. So, along with Lydia and Josue and the Texas group, I'm very grateful for them being part of the community with them and their help with mentoring us. And he'll be missed.
Thank you so much, Pamela. Helen?
Yeah, hi. I didn't get to actually meet Bob Kafka in person, but over many years, I've been interested in media and highlighting different people producing content for community. And I just have to say, getting to know him in listservs back in the day, writing letters when we used to have the listservs and media talk and different areas like that I was involved with. I really appreciated his mentorship. I'm sort of like a kind mentor that can go toe to toe and advocate, but he actually gave me a little extra punch, and I loved his sense of humor. But I absolutely loved his show, Barrier Free Futures, that he did. He hosted that show wonderfully. You got a sense of the community. I just really appreciated not only his advocacy work, boots on the ground, but boots on the ground in media, because we needed more folks like him doing consistent radio shows and getting them out there. So I just want to raise that up, and he will definitely be missed. I just loved how he got involved so creatively, as well as he just was his determined self in a very blunt, straightforward way, and I love that about him.
That was so well said, Helen. Yes, he definitely had lots of different avenues for his organizing, and we are so lucky that we have so many records of his voice and storytelling through Barrier Free Futures that's still available. So we'll go to Robert and then Lou. Oh, dyslexia. Robert, I think you are on mute.
Mm. Yeah.
Only Myra left the meeting.
Um, yeah, I think, I think I met Bob once at, uh, um, and we talked briefly, but I never, if he ever came to Chicago, I think I met him because I recognize the, picture, but I think we talked briefly, and I definitely liked his energy, and he was, I never did go to his radio show, but, over the last week or 2 weeks, I realized that he was
DNLD to everyone. https://bob.barrierfreefeatures.org.
He was a champion of advocacy for a long time, and I think, like I said, I think I met him once, but I don't,
Cont'd, mute, currently unmuted, Alt+A.
I don't, like I said, I never went to Texas, but, uh, from what I've read, and from what I've seen, and from what I've heard, he's going to be missed, and he, uh, and I didn't know that he started the, uh, residential services or transportation, which those things are very important. So I commend him, and I ought to commend him for starting REV UP, because REV UP is very important, because it's a way for people with disabilities to vote and get their voices heard. And he was uh, uh, the creator of that. So it's an honor to have briefly talked to him,
Cont'd,
and,
mute, currently unmuted, Alt+A.
and also learn about him over the last 2 days. So
Cont'd, audio now unmuted, Zoom meeting.
he was
Alexia. Thank you so much, Robert. I'm glad that you got to meet him. And yeah, I love that you're experiencing the impact of all this storytelling about him in his celebration of life. Uh, yeah, go ahead, Lou.
Cont'd, audio now unmuted, Zoom meeting, mute, currently unmuted, Alt+A.
Hi, how you doing? My name is Lou. Can you hear me okay?
Aaron Jones has left the
Yes,
meeting.
Alexia, we can hear you.
And I'm from Pennsylvania. I'm 66 years old, and Bob Kafka came into my life 30 some years ago with ADAPT. And I'm a person that is blind. And when we'd go on these national actions, we all had roles and jobs to do. And since I was a person that is blind, he sometimes would put me in charge of operating the elevator, cramming wheelchairs, getting people up and down the elevator, and even helping people who are on scooters or wheelchairs go up and down escalators. I'd stand behind them and help them support them so they wouldn't fall. So going up and down escalators, which was absolutely thrilling. My favorite action of all was
Alexander has joined the meeting.
action of all was down in Atlanta, Georgia, when we were chasing the American Healthcare Association. And I would like to suggest years ago, Tom Olin, the great photographer with ADAPT, the Smithsonian Institute had a gallery of his work some years ago. And I would just like to suggest to somebody that the Smithsonian Institute show their appreciation for Bob by displaying some of Tom's work, all that we did. Thank you.
Thank you. This is Alexia. Thank you so much for sharing, Lou. I love that. That story, I think, captures so much of Bob and REV UP, in that he was adamant that every person had a role to play. Everyone can contribute and everyone wants to contribute. And on this slide, I have a photo of Bob in his manual wheelchair in front of a bus that has steps. And he's saying separate is never equal on a protest sign. And on the right, I have a more recent photo of Bob with several REV UP Texas advocates in the Capitol holding signs that say "Power the Disability Vote." So I I love that his approach to advocacy is the same from 30, 40 years ago as it was last year. That's really beautiful. Postway and Adapt Texas are doing really great work honoring Bob's legacy and capturing stories. So we're going to share in the chat a link to the Adapt Texas website. If you have more stories you want to share about Bob, we definitely encourage you to send them. And they are also hosting an in-person and a virtual celebration of life on January 31st. And we'll also share a link in the chat of APD's post about Bob Kafka if you are new to Rev Up and want to learn a bit more about him. Okay, so we'll go to the next slide, please. I really, one more, next slide. Yeah, I really want to express my gratitude for all of you for holding this space to celebrate Bob and for so many of you sharing your own memories of him. As Ulissa remembered, something Bob was known for saying and signing off emails with was don't mourn, organize. And so it's with that in mind that we move to the next part of our call, but definitely are still holding space for the heavy emotions and grief that we're experiencing. Next slide, please. Bob was also adamant, I will say, on pushing us to improve our data collection and asking me about the impact of Rev Up and how we were growing. So I think he would be very proud that in 2025, the Rev Up network directly engaged over 27,000 voters. And in this number, I'm not including indirect outreach like social media, texts, or emails. This is all people that we directly registered, helped update an address, request an absentee ballot, or provided direct, nonpartisan, accessible voter education. So a huge, huge applause to the many organizers in this room who were part of those registrations. A big shout out to Rev Up Texas, who I think had the highest number of registered voters of any of our states. So very proud of everyone and your work. And I'm excited that we are going to reach even more disabled voters this year. And to help us keep track of that, we'll share in the link our voter engagement report form so that we can continue to build our movement, measure that impact, and really get everyone to pay attention to the power of the disability vote. So in 2026, we all know this is a huge year. There's a lot on the ballot, from Senate to U.S. House to governors, lieutenant governors, attorney general, secretary of state. The list goes on. And from the Rev Up movement, our 2026 core goals are direct voter outreach. We want to keep registering new disabled voters, keep supporting them and requesting their ballots and learning their rights. We also are working to build capacity and sustainable power in our movement. So drawing on Bob's wisdom of a role for everyone and creating leadership for disabled organizers. And then finally, and this is the one that we're going to be focusing on our call today, we have a goal of protecting voter rights. So we're seeing that both in responding to acts of voter suppression and in supporting bills that increase voting access, because they are happening. They do exist. It's not all bad news all the time, I promise. So with that focus in mind, we're going to transition to our guest presentation. So I'm really excited to introduce Evan Preston. He is from the organization Secure Democracy and Voting Rights Lab. And Evan is going to talk with us about some trends across states about both threats to voting rights and opportunities for voting rights. If you have questions for Evan, hold those in your mind to the end of the presentation. If you need to put them in the chat so you don't forget, that is okay, but we will have time at the end. All right, passing to you, Evan.
Thank you, Alexia. This is Evan Preston, Senior Director of Advocacy with Voting Rights Lab and Secure Democracy USA. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm a middle-aged person, male presenting with red hair and a red beard. I'm wearing a blue shirt and I have a bright background. Just thank you so much for welcoming me to this space. It's an honor to be here with so many advocates that I have such profound respect for, and uh, particularly on this day honoring Bob Kafka, the advocates in Texas that I've been fortunate to work with. So grateful to see Ulissa, and shout out to Chase and many of the folks in Austin that are doing such great work. Um, I'm going to start sharing my slides now here with a brief presentation, which seeks to introduce my organizations. So my first slide here is just showing Voting Rights Lab and Secure Democracy, talking about how we together as a thanks to the great organizing of your movement, and how we seek to be useful partners in protecting free and fair and accessible elections in 2026. And I'm so glad Alexia mentioned the opportunities, because I do think there are clear opportunities for improvement, and no one proved that better than the improvements that we saw in Texas this past session, somewhat unexpectedly, which I'll say more about in a few minutes. First, in this slide, I'm explaining who Voting Rights Lab is, and we're a 501c3 nonpartisan organization working to secure and expand voting rights in all 50 states. Our mission is to build stronger elections state by state so that all eligible Americans have the opportunity to participate freely in fair and secure elections. Our vision is for an America where all eligible voters can freely participate in those elections and trust that their leaders are duly elected and will respect the will of the people. We aim to achieve this vision by providing real-time monitoring and analysis guided by our election policy tracker. We work to leverage strong cross-partisan networks and in-state relationships, and we work on shaping the stories that we tell to make them more powerful through research to understand how people think about election policy and developing communication tools. And finally, we work to build a broader pro-democracy coalition that reaches beyond ideological lines and connects different movements together to be more powerful as a whole. Next slide is Secure Democracy USA is a nonpartisan 501c4 nonprofit organization which advocates in states for practical election solutions, guided by that research on our C3 side and supported across the ideological spectrum. We have a daily presence in 8 state capitals in 2026 in Arizona, Michigan, North Carolina, Florida, Georgia, New Hampshire, Wisconsin, and Texas. And we can also help with C3 activity in Pennsylvania and Mississippi. We help craft legislation and amendment language to benefit voters and election administrators. We analyze legislation to provide insights on the impact of proposed changes to election law. Next, I've learned so much again from many of the advocates on this call that I want to thank. Again, I mentioned the Coalition for Tax and Disabilities. Also want to shout out Molly Broadway and the Disability Rights Texas, Barbara Beckert when she was with Disability Rights Wisconsin, and my colleague Diego Echeverry, who's worked in a number of states, would want to shout out Disability Rights New Hampshire, whose initiative on the accessible voting system pilot program we supported. But to outline to all of you, if you haven't worked with us, what things we can offer, first is we can offer intel and materials to co-create campaigning on accessible policies in our 10 states. We know that your voices are some of the most persuasive, often with decision makers. And so we likewise want to be useful to all of you in the policy priorities that you have in your states. So I want to offer our capacity for the ability to do message research as well and messaging tools if we haven't connected with you in the past. We want to ensure that all of our material reflects your insights and likewise make the materials that we have available useful to you in your campaigns. Finally, we develop model language, and we have examples with detailed analysis from all 50 states that we track, and we're happy to make that available to any of your organizations if it's ever useful to you in discussing the impact of proposed changes. Another way that we aim to be useful to all organizations interested in election policy is by maintaining what I mentioned before, our election law tracker. I'll have a link to this and make this available to everyone here through Alexia and the conveners at the end of the call, but I want to just describe what it does first if you haven't had a chance to use it. The tracker is a tool that allows you to search through state law based off of the types of law that you're interested in and based off of the impact. So, for instance, you can search for the rules for requesting mail ballots and third-party assistance and whether third-party assistance would be restricted or made more accessible across states by using these combinations of searches that are displayed in the visual image that I have displayed on this slide. The same thing for polling place procedures on accessibility. This is something that we want to thank Alexia and AAPD and other partners for encouraging us to build out and giving feedback. And we've been glad to work with you all in the past on this and would love to develop that further to make it more useful to you in refining the categories. If anyone of your organizations would want training on how to use this tracker, we're happy to do that. Our staff of lawyers who maintain it run trainings for organizations and volunteers who want to use this for their own advocacy. And you can reach me at evan.preston@securedemocracyusa.org, and I'll connect you with a trainer on my team. Now, I want to address some of the threats that we see in 2026. And before I get into the details, I want to just acknowledge that state policies on elections are one crucial lever for power, but they are, of course, not the only lever for power. You might be most concerned about the litigation environment in your state, and you might be doing great work on that front with plaintiffs from your organizations, or you might be concerned about the prospect for retaliatory funding cuts to services if you speak out on things that the president or the governor is doing. So what I'm about to share is only what I would propose as a part of our way forward together. I believe it is a key and necessary part, but I wouldn't be arguing that this is all that there is to be concerned about or worth addressing. I can't offer a silver bullet for these threats, but I can offer hope. Hope based off of the tangible things that we have done together and can do to address these threats. So the first category that we think about is in efforts to control who can register to vote and show up to vote. The second is on weakening the popular vote methods and creating chaos and confusion. And the final is on laying groundwork for overturning election results. In the first category here, just a couple of the examples that folks on this call are, I'm sure, well experienced in confronting. Proof of citizenship mandates, we saw a rash of these last year. Requirements for voters to present a birth certificate or passport to register to vote or to remain a registered voter are the perfect example of this type of threat. But we saw bills in more than half of the states this past year proposing such requirements. And while we together defeated the majority of those bills, even in very challenging places like Texas, Florida, Mississippi, and Missouri, and more, we know that these are coming back, and they've already been proposed, for instance, in Florida, which I'll talk more about later. With that in mind, moving to the second type of threat that we see here, there are just, I want to mention in the same category, briefly too, though, we expect, as I'm sure you're already aware, there is a pending Supreme Court decision that could dramatically restructure or restrict the ability of the Voting Rights Act to provide protections to eligible voters. That could create a lot of chaos in who is able to register to vote and how their votes count. There have been attacks on voter registration drives in places like North Carolina, and there have been efforts to change the eligibility requirements dramatically to target overseas voters, student voters, and other voters. And finally, there have been some pretty bad list maintenance proposals to purge the rolls and withdraw people inappropriately using inaccurate sources of data. The second type of threat that we track is on policies seeking to eliminate popular vote methods and cause chaos and confusion at the polls. The president has consistently attacked, as I'm sure you know, early and mail voting, even for deployed members of the military overseas. On election day last month, the president's press secretary announced that there would be another executive order targeting mail-in early voting. And we're expecting that there will be efforts in state legislatures that would do this. We've seen the early signs of them already. There is another court case that could impact this dramatically that I'm sure you may be very well aware of, and I believe some folks on here are part of this case, but coming out of Mississippi that seeks to end the ability to count ballots that are received after Election Day and change the ballot return deadline nationwide through the Supreme Court. Finally, there are efforts that lay the groundwork for overturning legitimate election results. This third bucket includes all the policies that open the door to political interference and manipulation of results. That can take the form of introducing discretion or investigations into the certification process, or allowing mass voter challenges in more states, as we've seen in places like Georgia. We're also consistently seeing attacks on voting equipment and efforts to replace tabulation with hand counts. Though here I would highlight again, Texas is a positive example where there were efforts by some counties to move in this direction that were then abandoned after the problems were confronted by local officials at the party primary trying to do this and finding that it would be impossible to execute. So we can certainly see also proposals to take over nonpartisan administration of elections in key counties for partisan advantage that see high engagement and turnout as well. That's a lot, but that's just a snapshot of what we're watching for this year. And I want to highlight how we have the opportunity to go on the offense where there are proactive opportunities. And the good news here is that there's quite a lot. So first on ensuring voter lists are accurate and that eligible voters are not removed from rolls. We have a variety of ways of doing this to strengthen list maintenance procedures, to tighten the rules for mass registration challenges, to implement the state level safeguards that prevent erroneous removals. And for one example is in Michigan, there's a piece of active legislation to refresh and improve its list maintenance procedures, mainly to ensure that there are countering the false narratives about non-citizens voting and a proposed ballot measure. The second category of offensive opportunity to improve voter experiences is ensuring smooth ballot casting and timely results. And this we do by preventing last-minute law policy changes. So in some states, we've succeeded with a coalition of securing quiet periods where they're not protected by federal law for having last-minute changes, limiting disruptions at polling places by limiting the types of in-person challenges that can be done, strengthening the ballot curing process. Here again, there's a highlight in Texas, but also in Wisconsin that have both moved in this direction this year. And we can also see in this category ensuring that having pre-processing will speed the time that it takes to tabulate results and increase confidence for voters. A third category of offense potential is to ensure that the results are accurate and trusted. There are ways to improve the audit process that ensures that transparency and that voters know that their ballot is counted as cast, and ensuring that the systems are voter verifiable. Though this is something I've learned a lot from you all about, that there are challenges on the horizon with the new standards for voting equipment, but it's something that we can push for in state legislatures for the types of voting equipment that can be voter verified. Finally, implementing in the reporting of auditing and logic and accuracy results, we've seen opening up the behind the scenes work of election administrators and having more members of the public, including volunteers that do voter registration, like many of your organizations, members who can know about what the procedures are and can therefore be trusted messengers in your community if there are ever questions about this. Finally, on certification, there are ways to strengthen the accountability and certification, as I mentioned, that ensuring that this is a non-discretionary duty in state law, that you tighten the processes and timelines for post-election challenges and protests so that there's not an opportunity for someone to manipulate those results or put pressure on the officials to not certify the legitimate winners. So those are the headlines, and there's a lot, but I just want to call out a few specific pieces of legislation at the moment that are moving, that are positive. So the positive legislation, I want to really credit here Disability Rights Wisconsin for great work on Assembly Bill 599 in Wisconsin that would implement the permanent absentee voting list. There are a number of proactive things moving in Wisconsin. Also, Assembly Bill 617 that has those cure provisions I mentioned before and improves ballot tracking. In Georgia, we believe this session, thanks to, again, shout out here, New Disabled South, pending legislation on curbside voting improvements. And in New Hampshire, there is an opportunity to fix a problem that the New Hampshire legislature created in recent years on excessive ID requirements for proving citizenship. We believe there's an opportunity to move in the good direction there and leveraging real ID to make accessibility better for residents of New Hampshire that do have a New Hampshire real ID. Now, there are some threats on the horizon. So already in Florida, there are a couple versions of documentary proof of citizenship requirements that would make access worse for ID. And in North Carolina, there's a pending omnibus bill that has a lot of things included, but would make access worse and introduces privacy concerns as it seeks to kind of codify some of the conspiracies around last year's Supreme Court, state Supreme Court election race. So those are the highlights of some proactive opportunities. And finally, I just want to say, thank you for the time being in front of everyone. I appreciate all of your work and the chance to work with so many of the great organizations represented here. If you want more info about the election policy tracker or to sign up for our newsletters that have a digestive analysis on these issues, there's a link to that I can share as well to follow up. So thank you again so much for your time and for all of your work.
This Alexia. Thank you so much, Evan. Yes, we will be sending out the slides and the links that Evan shared, and I absolutely recommend signing up for their newsletter. I appreciate it so much. Yeah, we have a couple minutes for questions or comments. Any questions coming to mind for folks?
This is Jessica Mathis. I'm
Yeah,
sorry
go ahead, Jessica.
to the meeting. Just got in from doing a community event for whole health. But I thank the gentleman for his comments on voter registration. We in Georgia, we use a lot of absentee ballots for seniors in congregate settings. and they're saying that they're trying to get rid of it. So is it any way that we can like express the importance of it? Like, I guess what I'm saying is put emphasis on it. And then another question that I had as well is the electronic ballot machines. They also have or marking devices. Stacy's been telling us a lot about those, and I'm watching out this year for those and things like that. And what can we do to further emphasize the uh importance of accessibility on the federal level and on the state level? Because a lot of these times when you talk about going back to hand ballots, I mean, most people don't even use hand ballots anymore. Not only that, it's not as accessible as what they want to be. So, I mean, I guess you could use universal design or something. I don't know. But that's all I have to say.
Great. Thank you for that question, Jessica. I can maybe just briefly address that from what I know of what's going on in Atlanta. Yes, it is absolutely a question that the legislature will be debating how to change the voting equipment and when to change it. There are proposals in law right now that would require a massive overhaul of the election equipment this year, which we have a lot of concerns about the pace of doing that, the feasibility of doing that, and the cost of doing that. I think it is possible that the legislature will reconsider that deadline at least and change so that they do not completely get rid of the equipment that they have relied upon in recent years.
Mm-hmm.
This is Alexia. Thank you, Evan. And Jessica, the second half of our call is going to be perspectives from two grassroots advocates in Alabama talking about how they did advocacy at the state house. So I think that'll help too. Yeah, and on the federal level, I wanted to share that the Supreme Court case that Evan mentioned that has to deal with absentee ballot return dates, AAPD and Disability Rights Mississippi were represented by ACLU to submit an amicus brief, which is like a
Mm-hmm.
letter that goes to the court, sharing our perspective on the issue. And
Mm-hmm.
we highlighted the impact on older adults, disabled people, and those communities that are rural, and really rely on absentee voting and voters in congregate settings. So I will keep you updated if there's any action items there on the federal level, but I really appreciate you raising that.
Okay.
Awesome. So we're gonna go to Rashida and then Blair.
Thank you, Alexia. Thank you, Evan, for that presentation. Can you hear me? Because I'm in the busy streets of New York City, so it's always loud.
Yes,
But
Alexia, we can hear you.
okay, great. So I am the president and founder of One Heart, One Vision, and we are owned, operated by blind women for just a lot of stuff. But the key is that we're owned and operated by blind women. And you were talking about your monitoring eval system. And one of the biggest problems as a blind civic organizer, and I've spoken about this ad nauseum to Alexia, it's just the tracking process. A lot of things aren't accessible and getting people to just help us with photography and so on and so forth. Is this tracker, do you think that this tracker would help us? And is it in a screen reader friendly format? Hello?
Yes, thank you for
Oh,
that question, Rashida. This is Evan. Yes, we aim to make that accessible. I would be happy to follow up and verify whether that is screen readable, and if not, to work with our team on adapting that.
This is Alexia. When we worked with Voting Rights Lab last year, I believe you all did some additional testing and we had another blind member try it out. And I think they were able to use it, but I will say Voting Rights Lab has been really receptive to feedback. So we have a direct commitment and connection with them on that, Rashida.
Alexia, can you send me the link afterwards? Everybody's putting stuff in the chat and it's kind of
Yes.
driving me crazy with my screen reader, so I keep it cut off. Because I would like to look at that.
Yes, I will send you the link.
Thank you, Evan.
All right, we will go to Blair and then Pam.
Me and Blair are part of the empowerment committee, and we were just
Cincinnati, Ohio.
Of Cincinnati, Ohio. I am Jennifer Crow, and we were wondering, how can you bring the tracker and some of the other stuff to Ohio so that we can take it to the State House and advocate for voting rights here?
Thank you so much for that question. This is Evan again. We are happy to provide training to you and anybody on the empowerment committee in Ohio to use the information in the tracker to inform your work in Columbus. So I'm happy to drop my contact info again and connect you with trainers on our team so that you can get all of the information about how to use it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, also one more question. With the changes to the Postal Service that are quietly being done, and a lot of people don't know anything about that, how can we get that out to more people about those changes as far as like the mail-in voting and all that stuff is going on right now?
Sure. Thank you for that question. Again, I would say that we have a number of resources on our website in the newsletter previous editions that Alexia mentioned that address how the Postal Service's changes to the postmarking date might impact voters. I'll say it is a little bit unclear at the moment how that will function because we haven't seen it tested in enough elections yet to know with concrete details from impacted individuals. So one thing that I would just flag that I think we could learn a lot from you all is there's some question of how this, what it will practically mean. We know some of what they're saying it will do, and we have some analysis based off of the letter of the law of what the USPS has said, but I think we'll need to see what happens to individual ballots and individual voters in some states before we have a lot more to say.
All right, thank you.
This is Alexia, and I will, in case folks don't know what Blair and Jennifer are mentioning, they're talking about this change that recently became public from the United States Postal Service that is going to change when they mark your mail as received. So if you are more than 50 miles from what's called a regional hub, your mail might not get counted by the post office until the next day. And so that can affect your absentee ballot if it looks like you mailed it after election day, even if you might not have in reality. So I think one thing I would say too is going to be really important for all of our registration and education messaging this year is that we are going to push people to request their ballots as soon as they can and to return them as soon as they can. So giving just as much time as possible for that ballot to get there. I really appreciate you guys are already thinking of this. That makes me feel encouraged. Go ahead. We'll go to Pam and then Robert.
Yeah, I'm an organizer too, and I always tell people prior to this stuff that just came out about postmarking is especially like you said, if you're far away from one of the hubs, you can never count on a postmark. They don't automatically postmark mail. So I always tell people to make sure their stuff is in well ahead if they're going to mail it, and if they're close to go in and request. And unfortunately, it's not like I have a lot of issues going into the post office with my mobility and everything. So it's not, we all understand that struggle, I think. But I'd love to chat with you about focusing on, I have some ideas about the tracker and what we should be doing for our community. And would love to have more of a chat, because that's the hardest thing about finding us, is if we use a lot of the resources we have to create lists and stuff, there's usually not a place for you to find persons with disabilities on these. You can find people based on their age, uh based on where they live, based on supposed or verified ethnicity, but that's the hardest part about that we find with ours. So I'd love to work with you on the tracker to find ways to do that, and to find our people. And in North Carolina, I'm in North Carolina. Do you know if there's any other states, or if there's looking at expanding in North Carolina? If you're a person who is blind, low vision, or have print difficulties, you can request a special ballot, which is like the UACAVA ballot, which is like voting online. So is there any movement towards that becoming more accessible for anyone with a disability, or just all voters?
Thanks for that question, Pam. This is Evan. I'll say briefly, I think there are others who would be more expert than me about making that accessible in other states, but I am aware of one opportunity to improve the law in other states, because for military and overseas voters, this has often been a place where we have advocated in conjunction with disability rights advocates to allow for electronic ballot return. The Department of Defense is winding down one of the ways that they support fax returns for military and overseas voters. That, I think, will force a decision on legislators in a number of states whether they will create electronic ballot return for the first time in their states, and expanding the populations that can use a form of electronic ballot return. So I would highlight that as we should have a conversation, follow up, let other expert advocates who've worked on electronic ballot return for people with disabilities in their states speak to this. But I'll just say, on our part, we would be happy to work with you on that in North Carolina or elsewhere.
Thank you.
Miss Alexia, thank you so much. Lifting up from the chat too, Brianna shared that Massachusetts has electronic ballot return after a long process of lawsuits and advocacy work by the disability community. Yes, I think lawsuits are how that right was won in most states, including North Carolina. So yeah, it is a long process. Well, thank you so much, Evan. Robert, I see you have your hand up. We are at our time for our break. So I'm wondering if you can put in the chat or email us your question, and we will get it to Evan so he can answer it. But we are going to go ahead and pause and take our break. We will come back at 10 minutes after the hour. And we will have a lovely presentation from two fabulous grassroots activists. So I hope that you will be able to stick around. Hello, this is Alexia. Welcoming folks back after our break. Thank you so much for sticking around. For the second half of our call, we're going to have some wonderful advocates share their perspectives. And then at around 2:30, 2:40, we're going to move into breakout rooms to allow folks to discuss and connect more. So I am excited to introduce Kathy Jones, who is with the League of Women Voters Alabama Education Fund, and Percy Garrett, who is an Alabama advocate for Seeing Without Sight. So thank you both so much for being here.
We're glad to be here. Do you want us to introduce ourselves, or how do you?
Let me go ahead and make sure you are both.
All right. My name is Kathy Jones, and I have brown hair, shoulder length. I have a blue sweater on, standing in my office, front bedroom actually, and I'm really happy to be here. And I live in North Alabama, which is really pretty close to the Tennessee state line. So today we're looking at the temperature starting to drop. And so I guess we're all dealing with winter still.
Fair enough. Yeah, Percy, can you give us a short introduction?
Alexa, did you call me?
Yes. Can you just give us a short introduction of yourself?
Sure. My name is Percy Garrett, and I'm located in Dothan, Alabama, and I'm with the National Federation of the Blind and Alabama Institute for the Deaf and the Blind. And as my introduction is read in the caption, I am an advocate for seeing without sight. In other words, we're advocating for the ability of the blind to see without having actual sight to do so. I have served as the chairman of the legislative committee for the National Federation of the Blind, and we've gone before the Alabama legislators several times for three different basic issues. Although we looked at issues that concern not just the blind, but for the blind and disabled, and for those who just need the same thing that we need. The three things that we looked at as blind people was education. So we wrote a draft bill to hand over to the legislators to find a champion for that bill, called the Bright Bill, which will enable blind students to get educated in school.
Yes.
By way of having a teacher there who will teach them Braille to enable them to keep up with their peers, and to teach them mobility training, enable them to get around, to be mobile as they walk around. And other thing that we fought for with the break bill is the ability to understand electronic technology, to enable them to study, to do research, and to enhance their ability to compete with their peers. That bill got to the legislators because we took it to the House and passed it to them. We sent it through email. We sent it right to their office, and even called them. But it failed. It didn't go any further. But we're still fighting that bill, or that issue. And the other thing that we're fighting is electronic voting. I heard it come up today, which is a good thing. And they always thought that it was insecure. And we talked to them about blockchain technology and how it secures electronic online voting. And how West Virginia and several other states are using electronic online voting using blockchain technology, and has found it to be secure in all levels of voting for those states. But by the way, the Bitcoin money situation, financial situation, uses blockchain. And our own president is getting involved in blockchain technology because he's getting involved in Bitcoin. So it has to be safe. If you can trust your money with it, why not trust your voting also? So the next thing that we looked at in Alabama legislation is transportation. Transportation in Alabama is probably the lowest in all of the states. We talk about voting, it's hard to get to the polls. In some places, it's almost an impossibility to get to the polls. The last two times I went to the polls, in midterm and in November, I had to use an Uber. That's $25 one way, average. It was $50 round trip. Just to go vote. And when I get there, they do have an electronic voting machine. I heard that come up too. Every precinct, by law, has to have an electronic voting machine for the blind and any other voter who wants to use it. So they're there, but you have to get there. And that takes transportation. So we fought for a transportation bill in Alabama, which went nowhere, even though the bill was drafted and was handed over to the legislature. So we're still fighting that issue. The next thing that we looked at was the ability to get to the State House and see a legislator. Well, you can get there if you pay your own way. But once you get there, you might have 2 minutes with the legislature. So we're still fighting to see a legislator and to converse with them. It hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, thank you so much for
that I would like to see is for us as Alabama Rise, REV UP, League of Women Voters, and the Alabama Disabled people. Just get together and have one of these Zoom meetings or some Zoom meetings before we go to the legislature, before we go to Montgomery. Let us get together and talk about our issue and see if we can put those issues together and work together on these issues. And that's all I have.
Miss Alexia, thank you so much. I really appreciate all the different pieces that you are connecting together and your experience on those issues. Kathy, can you talk us through some of the voting rights legislation that you've seen in Alabama and what advocacy strategies did you use? And I know you and Percy have also worked together, so maybe you can talk about that too.
Yes. So right after the 2020 election, that was really when we started seeing a lot of bills that were actually very deliberately trying to make it harder to vote for, and by and large, most of them had a disproportionate effect on people with disabilities. From what I'm understanding from other leagues is they were seeing the same kind of bills showing up in their states as well. But one of the first ones that passed without being able to stop it is a ban on curbside voting. We've never had drop-off boxes, but they did allow during COVID the ability to have someone standing out on the curb and picking up your packet from the office. But they banned drop boxes, they banned curbside voting. There's a lot of other things that were passed during that first year after 2020 when the Stop the Steal allegations were being thrown out that were to make voting safer, and it fixed problems that did not exist. But it has basically put roadblocks in our way to being able to make voting more accessible. I say roadblocks because I see nothing as unfixable if we get legislators that are willing to fix it. We've had other bills that we have successfully fought. One of the ones that Percy was involved in with us several people from the National Federation of the Blind joined us down in Montgomery to fight a bill that every year, at first it started out as a bill that would ban any assistance with our absentee voting process in Alabama. Absentee voting in Alabama is not like mail-in voting. It has certain excuses that you have to meet in order to be able to request a ballot, and then you have to print the ballot out. It's undone with paper. There's no electronic form, and you have to mail it back. Then you have to make sure it's witnessed, make sure you've got everything filled out correctly, and then you get your ballot delivered, and then you have to deliver it back. And it's illegal for anyone to take your ballot or your application and deliver it to the absentee election manager. So what this bill was trying to do was to make it absolutely illegal across the board to help anyone with absentee voting. And so we fought it for 3 years before it eventually passed. But the thing that was really gratifying was the fact that we showed up, and the people from the National Federation of the Blind, they brought a busload of people who walked into the committee room, and basically I had never seen the committee members sit up straighter than they did when they saw people walking into the room with disabilities. And then they turned around and stood up and spoke to them about the impact that this would cause to them. And so that the bill died 2 years in a row, and I know it was because of that. And then the third year it passed, but they reduced the scope of it down to just to help with people with disabilities. It basically was just talking about applications only. There still was problems with the bill. And so, we worked hand in hand with disability groups to fight this all the way. But then we turned around and sued them. And we're still in a lawsuit on this right now. The federal court has given an injunction to Alabama to allow anyone to help someone with disabilities, anyone that's they call it Voting Rights Act Section 208. So that it's just a really, to me, it's a good story, because even though it's got a bad situation right now, but it could have been a whole lot worse if we had not fought it for 2-3 years. We were at third year it passed. So I hope that kind of gives you a feel. That's the kind of thing that we're doing, and it really is so effective when we go in there as a partnership. So we spoke, they spoke, and the legislators listened. They still may do what they want, but they did adjust a little bit.
Ms. Alexia, thank you, Kathy. I'm really, I've been in awe of Alabama advocates continuing to show up, and even when the bill eventually passed, you still are continuing to fight it and to support the community impacted by it. Percy, you talked about this a little bit when you mentioned how short of a time giving testimony is, but can you speak to us a bit about what's it like to provide testimony at the State House, and what advice would you give to a disabled leader who is maybe doing it for the first time?
Well, if you are advocating for against legislation that's being passed or not passed by the legislators, know what the bill says and know how it impacts the disabled person, the blind person, or the senior citizen. Know the impact of it, and then when you go before them, you can be bold, and if you need to give them instruction on what they need to change, you can do that.
Thank you so much. I'm curious too, and this question is for both of you. Kathy, you mentioned that rightfully so, we're seeing states learn from each other, right? And passing similar voter suppression bills. So what lessons from organizing in Alabama do you think other advocates can learn?
Well, I think the biggest thing is, you have to start early when they're dropping these bills, the SB1 the reason it was SB1 is because they dropped it in June. I mean, these guys are proud to drop crappy bills.
And dropping it in June, the year before the session, right? So this is the first bill that they wanted to introduce, and they filed it 6 months early, just to put that in perspective for folks.
Well, yeah. And so the thing is, you got to be paying attention. That's one of the things you got to be watching, see what drops. Our Secretary of State brags on his news channels about the summer of 24 of dropping 3,200 people off the voter rolls who he said were illegal citizens, and turns out he was wrong, and we sued him. I mean, several of us sued him, but it's just like you've got to be paying attention. You also need to stay close to your coalition as far as when you find the problem, we need to talk about it, make sure we understand the impact, that it's real, that we're, because the league may not understand the real impact to people with disabilities, but if we talk to people who are disabled, then we understand it a lot better. And then we all need to basically, all of these issues tend to affect a lot of different groups of people, and maybe a little bit differently. But if we can all find common ground and then stay together as we go fight, then we stand a pretty good chance. If we don't stop it, we can at least mitigate it. And then if we don't mitigate it, we can always take further action after they pass it. Because it is an ongoing battle, and we can't give up.
And I think that all of these battles are rabbit trails.
And you're probably,
because if we went ahead as a voter bloc and help the legislators see that electronic voting is good for the whole state, it will be a win for everybody. We wouldn't have to fight all these different battles and go down all these different rabbit trails. So I think if all of the advocates got together every year and talk about electronic voting and see what we need to do to help get it passed, then we would do a whole lot better instead of fighting these rabbit trails.
And Percy, you're exactly right, is the fact that our energy, we have such a small, we're not a huge organization. All of us are together are a lot bigger, but he's right. We're wasting energy when we're always fighting against something bad. But we have to be ready to fight, but we also need to be doing good things. And that's what, and so right now, while we're not pushing on the electronic voting, we do have 4 good bills that we're basically advocating and saying, if you want to do something good, here you go. And we have legislators that we worked with them to actually draft the bills. They now come to us to let us review the bills to make sure that they're acceptable. And then they take our comments and put them in. And then for example, we've got an early voting bill that the entire Democratic Party has signed on as co-sponsors. Unfortunately, there's no Republicans who've signed on yet. We hope that might change. And then we've got the one that is right now to fix the fact that we need to legally allow someone to turn in a disabled person's absentee ballot, because we know that's violating the law, but right now they're not allowing it. So that's just examples, but Percy's right. We have to push on the good stuff, but also, we have to be ready to catch them in the bad.
Alexia, yeah, I love that so much. Of moving to an accessible democracy is just as much about protecting as it is of building the better pieces that we want to see. Robert, I see your hand. Did you have a question for Kathy and Percy?
I have a question for all of you, meaning you also, for all of you, which is the President of the United States wants to make voting rights
Base, mute me.
for everyone almost impossible. So I would say, and disability stuff in general, uh, he wants to take us back to the 50s and 60s. So I agree with the lady in the corner that said everything can change once
Base, mute,
once
currently unmuted, Alt plus
she's
A.
out of
Audio settings,
office,
start my video,
and
Alt plus
again,
B
she's
button.
back in the office this year. So I would say that
Control Shift Y, react.
that
This
my
effect,
question is, are you finding the same issues that 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 is happening in every state around the country? Is that he's taking away voting rights? He's also taking away education and several other things. So as the coalition and as people from Alabama, how are you dealing with him taking away our right to vote and disability, like special education and other disability issues that people with disabilities need. So that question is for everybody.
Yeah, thank you so much, Robert. Yeah, I'm thinking too of combining this question with another one I had for Kathy and Percy, which is yeah, both like how do we connect these other issues that impact disabled voters with voting? And also, like when you're getting advocates engaged in state level advocacy, how have you seen that change people as leaders or get them more civically engaged as voters?
Alex Saslow has left the meeting.
Can you say that question again, please?
I'll
Go ahead, Kathy. Yeah.
I'll take the first cut, Percy, and then I'll hand it off to you. And I'm going to try to rephrase it so that you can tell me if I've got it right. So one of the ways we engage, the benefits of what you're talking about is civic engagement. That is the heart of a healthy community. And so, what we're seeing is as people start to interact with not only elected leaders, but with each other, then they're becoming more vested, more civically engaged in their communities, and it expands to include bigger than just where they live, but all around them. And we're seeing, and this goes across the spectrum. It's of people with all abilities that are, as you speak in front of elected leaders at the city council, county commission, state legislators, then you're getting more confidence and you're also honing your message. And as that happens, then you start, for one thing, you start building relationships, but you also are able to, it builds your self-confidence so that when you speak to them, you've got a message, you've got a direct ask. And that to me seems to be almost like an entryway to starting to feel confident about talking to the people that you're interacting with on a lot of different issues. And also when they don't give you what you need, then you come back and you stay engaged. And so it's just a continuum. Voting is just one piece of civic engagement. All of this stuff we're talking about with that engaging with the legislature is just one piece of it. And when I watched Percy speaking to the legislator, that to me, it was just really instructive, because I started realizing that he really got their attention, and I have no doubt that when they left, they knew who he was. They knew what his concerns were. They may choose to do something different, but the thing is that you start that process and and the more you do it, the more you basically want to do it and you're comfortable. And that, I think that may have answered your question as far as how do you build civic engagement for people with disabilities, but it also affects everybody.
Audio now unmuted.
I agree.
Did that answer your question? Okay.
Yeah, that was really beautiful. Percy, do you have anything to add on building civic engagement or connecting voting to other issues like education?
Well, you cannot add to perfection. You did a good job on that. My only other concern would be us working together, all advocacy groups working together as we're doing today. And before we go out to advocate with the legislators, it's for us to come together on Zoom like we're doing now. Then when we get there, we'll be in transfer. But I agree with Ms. Jones that we should start at the local level first.
Miss Alexia, well, that was perfectly put, Percy, in a great segue into the next part of our meeting. I wish we had more time. I have 1,000 more questions for the two of you, but hopefully we'll be able to keep learning and working together. But we are going to now go ahead and move into breakout rooms so that there is more space for people to ask questions or share reflections from their own state. So we will move you into those automatically, and then we'll come back into the main room with about 5 or 6 minutes until the end of the call. So about 55 after to close out. So in the breakout rooms, we are going to encourage folks to talk about state legislation that you are seeing in your state this year, advocacy strategies you've used, and successes and challenges. Aubriana and I will each be in a breakout room to support with discussion and access. Thank you so much, Percy and Kathy, for being on to share.
This is Aubriana. Thank you all so much. We're just waiting for the other breakout room to join us, and then we'll close out for today. Wonderful. Thank you all so much. Going to pass it to Alexia.
Miss Alexia, thank you all so much, and so sorry to Dr. Bishop, who was saying something very wise and got cut off. There is truly never enough time, and I really appreciate everyone giving 2 hours of their day and sharing so much wisdom. If there was a question that you were hoping to ask and you didn't get to, please email revup@aapd.com and we will try to get you connected or get you an answer. And if there's someone you were trying to connect with in a breakout room, the larger meeting, or the chat, you can also reach out to us for help doing that if you weren't able to grab their information. I wanted to lift up a couple of things to look forward to this year. The first is that we will be launching our REV UP movement grants, which are small grants for grassroots organizations to build the power of the disability vote. We are particularly focusing on historically excluded communities, and those grants will launch this Friday. So look out for an email from us on how to apply and a social media post from AAPD. Additionally, we have 3 more national call dates this year. So you can register for all of those on our Mobilize page. And then finally, Disability Voting Rights Week is September 14th through the 18th this year. There is lots of good organizing and opportunities ahead at the national, state, and local level, so we hope that you will stay engaged. And thank you so much again to Kathy and Percy, to Evan, and to everyone who joined and shared their wisdom and gave their time. Aubriana, anything else to add?
Just really grateful for everyone's wisdom and collaboration and education sharing, and really looking forward to being together and building our movement, and looking forward to future collaborations. So please don't hesitate to reach out.
I like the, but this is about, I wanted to know if Alexia could, email me, because I want to, I would like to email you, some questions for you specifically, so if you could email me, I would appreciate it.
Yes, we will reach out to you, Robert. And then I saw Mark, did you have a quick comment? Let me know. You are on mute just in case you're talking, Mark.
Oh, Alexia. Oh,
We can hear you.
oh, okay. Thank you, Alexia. A happy New Year to everyone. I just wanted, this is Mark Saffman here. I'm in Astoria. I'm deafblind. We're partnered with the REV UP New York, with Kathy, Rashida, Anne Marie. Um, but I just want to share, I met with the New York State Board of Elections and the New York AG Voting Rights Office. It was really helpful because I know the Help America Votes Act has sections about helping people with disabilities, and that apply for assistance for people who are disabled, and it's really critical for our deaf-blind community. And it's really critical for like outreach events, and encouraging groups to plan events, with sufficient lead times. I mean, I've been getting notices already with like people emailing out, "Oh, hi, we have an event tomorrow." So we just want to stress that any groups that you're dealing with, make sure that they're sending out adequate notice. But the other thing I just want to mention really big, New York Census 2030 has just started like in November. And when they had their meeting, the organizers did not plan to make accommodations. And this is really critical because I know in New York we lost a congressional seat because we could not find 89 people. And when did a little more reading about the reports, they only had like three or four disabled groups involved with New York Census 2020 efforts, which is ridiculous. And so I did reach out to them. I did talk with them. Everyone's very nice, but you really, disabled groups really need to reach out to their state level, find out if when they're planning census, get involved with that because that's a great way to also reach out to people for voting, but it's also a good way to make connections with, like the philanthropy community here in New York. Is deeply involved with funding groups. They've set aside like 15 million, but so I just wanted to mention that, but it's something that definitely look out for your state, getting involved with the organizing early and definitely reaching out to people. I know, yeah, because I mean, New York, we lost 80, we lost a congressional seat because we couldn't find 89 people. And then like in 2021, when we were organizing for a deaf blind program here in New York, we did an informal survey. We did a survey of our deaf blind community. We partnered with Helen Keller National Center. We reached out to everyone, and then in 3 months, we uncovered 209 people. So, definitely your deaf blind community. Make sure you're partnering out with your deaf blind community, even if it's with the parent group. But every state should have a state deaf blind project. And if not, you can definitely reach out to me. I'll try to find them. We do have a lot of listservs, but our deaf blind community, the adult deaf blind community wants to be involved. And we're not necessarily, Helen Keller is not necessarily our friends. Where there's a lot of authentic representation issues. with our deaf-blind community. But if now, my name's Mark Southman, and I'll put my email in chat here. But thank you, Alexi. But it's critical whenever you're looking. Just remember to think about the deaf-blind community because we do want to be involved, and our presence really has. We need interpreters, we need co-navigators, we need help getting to the polls, we need help, doing voter absentee voting, all that, and we just need touch-based communication, and that's really critical. And we also need braille literacy. It's also one of our big issues. So it's we have a lot of interconnected issues. But thank you and happy New Year.
Thank you so much, Mark. And with that, we will close out and expect follow-up email from us later this week. Thank you so much, everyone. See you soon.